A game board consists of 64 squares that alternate in color between black and white. The figure below shows square P in the bottom row and square Q in the top row. A marker is placed at P. A step consists of moving the marker onto one of the adjoining white squares in the row above. How many 7-step paths are there from P to Q? And this is just an example of one path. Now first, let's start by finding out which squares we can move to. We can obviously move to all these squares because they're shown in the example. We cannot move to this square because we can only go up. We can move to this square, this square, this square, and this square. We can also move to this square, this square, this square, but we cannot move to this square because if we do, we would have no way to get to Q. Then we can move to this square. Again, we cannot go to this square because then there'd be no path to Q. And finally, we can go to this square. So let's copy paste this. This is point Q, and this is point P. Now there's a simple strategy to find out how many ways there are to get from point P to point Q. And it consists of us finding out how many ways there are to get from point P to each individual point on the grid. So all these points. Let's start with the easy ones. How many ways are there to get to this point? The only way to get here is to get from P and go straight there. So there's one way, the same with this point. Now what about this point? If we have a point and we want to find how many paths there are to get to it, we look at the points that we can get to it from. So for example, for this point, we can get to it from this point and then going right, or this point and going left. Once we have found all the points we can get to our point from, then we add the number of paths on those points. Now I know that sounds really confusing, but you'll get the hang of it soon. And I did prove this in another video if you want to go see it. I'll leave a link in the description. There's one way to get here and one way to get here, so there's two ways to get to that point. Now for this point, the only way to get to it is to get to this point and go to the right. So there's one way to get here. The only way to get to this point is to go to this point, then go left. So there's one way to go here. Same with this point. Now what about this point? We can get to this point from this point and then going right, or this point, then going left. There's two ways to get to here and one way to get to here. So there's 2 + 1 ways to get to here, which is 3. For this point, we can either go to this point and go to the right, or this point and go to the left. So there's 3 ways to get to here. To get to this point, we can come from this point and go to the right, or this point and go to the left. So there's 4 ways to get here. There's 6 ways to get here. 3 ways to get here, because the only way to get here is from this point and going right. There's 10 ways to get to this point, and 9 ways to get to this point. There's 19 ways to get to this point, and only 9 ways to get to this point, because we can only get to this point by going to this point and going to the right. And finally, we can get to point Q by going to this point and going to the right, or this point and going to the left. 19 + 9 is 28, so our answer is A.